Not every heist goes off without a hitch in the volatile world of crime. These would-be crooks had planned the ideal theft, but fate had other ideas. A couple of these people have tried to do their so-called business, and in the process ended up doing something stupid that made them get caught. Join us as we have a look at idiotic criminals that were caught on camera. A paraplegic deaf youngster attempted to rob a jewelry store in Brazil using a fake gun handled with his feet. A strange incident occurred, perplexing both witnesses and officials. The defendant, who has cerebral palsy and is unable to move his hands, used a unique method in his attempted robbery. He communicated his purpose to the store's employees by placing a threatening note on the counter with his foot. It said, "Hand over everything, don't draw attention to yourself." The act would be caught on camera by the store surveillance system. The video shows the adolescent in his wheelchair with a focus on his deliberate actions. He pointed a plastic toy gun at the store's counter, carefully fastened between his bare feet, and during the moment, a client appeared to leave the scene while the staff addressed the teen. He then proceeded to retrieve the toy rifle with his feet. The worker, understandably surprised, commented that the replica appeared genuine, prompting him to alert authorities. Another person in the business watched the events take place and immediately dialed 911. Law enforcement would respond to the scene and arrested the teenager. When an ill-prepared armed robber inadvertently took a knife to a gunfight, he learned a hard lesson. Surveillance cameras at a fuel station in Newport, Michigan, captured the amusing yet potentially dangerous incident. The man entered the BP gas station, concealing himself behind a green bandana. He approached the clerk with misplaced determination, carrying a notably large knife and allegedly demanding money. However, the calm and quick-thinking employee answered in such a way that the criminal was forced to flee. Rather than yielding to terror, he maintained a calm posture, stepping back while reaching beneath the counter. And what he found would make or break the situation. He took out a gun, showing preparedness to defend himself. In this confrontation, the tables were swiftly turned, and the robber, who had felt confident with his knife just moments earlier, found himself in a difficult predicament. He pointed the gun at the puzzled and now retreating robber, compelling the criminal to flee in haste with his unsaid message of force. You try to rob a store and absolutely nobody cares. In a brazen but ultimately bungled robbery attempt, a man found himself facing a group of individuals at a nail salon who were utterly unresponsive to his demands. Brandishing what appeared to be a concealed weapon inside of his bag, the man shouted commands for everyone to hand over their cash. However, his forceful demands fell on deaf ears. Even as he approached the counter, the cashier appeared unfazed, nonchalantly taking a phone call and strolling away. The man did manage to snatch a phone from one woman, prompting her to exit the establishment, but even then, the rest of the patrons and staff remained remarkably composed. After an excruciatingly awkward silence, the defeated robber decided to make a hasty exit, having failed to make off with any ill-gotten gains. The owner was understandably frightened during the incident, but he chose to maintain his composure, all in an effort to keep everyone calm. Police would offer general advice that compliance with robbery is advisable. Ignoring the robber is very risky. Ultimately, the would-be robber fled the scene in a car and got away. In the history of criminal misadventures, James Allen's ill-fated attempt to hold up Martin's newsagent in Abingdon stands as a comically inept event. The entire crime was captured on CCTV, and it took place in March of 2012. During his botched heist, James pulled a toy gun on the cashier, and then in an act of ill-conceived bravado, he lifted his balaclava and exposed his identity to both the cashier and the CCTV cameras. His misfortune continued on as he struggled to exit the premises, not realizing that he was pushing instead of pulling the door. In a desperate bid for freedom, he then resorted to kicking the door, only to trip and tumble backwards over a container of drinks. The pinnacle of his comedic criminal career came when a woman, previously held up by Allen during the robbery, took pity and opened the door to release him from his self-inflicted confinement. The police had decided to release the footage, which ultimately sealed Allen's fate. This hapless criminal, 29-year-old Allen, with no fixed address, received a sentence of 2.5 years for his robbery, which the video vividly documented. Remarkably, he had attempted to rob that same shop only 10 days earlier. The court handed down an additional 3-year sentence for the offense that was caught on camera, and 2 years for the possession of a firearm or imitation firearm, with all sentences running concurrently. Imagine this, a hilarious tale that reveals the perils of wearing your emotions on your sleeve while attempting to rob a store. Here, we have Umar Mirza, a rather clueless 26-year-old who decided to target a store called Paddy Power in Birmingham. The reason behind his heist? Well, it turns out that his previous attempt to secure a job at that very store had been a resounding failure. Determined to take matters in his own hands in revenge, he then masked his face and confidently entered the store, successfully making off with a whopping sum of $22,000. However, in his moment of triumph, he made one crucial blunder. He removed his mask, completely forgetting about the watchful eye of a surveillance camera that was adorning the store. As fate would have it, the store's owner, upon reviewing the footage after the audacious robbery, would instantly recognize Mirza's exposed face, and not willing to let the bungling thief get away, they then dug into their records and unearthed a treasure trove of information, including Mirza's very own resume, which he had previously submitted during his ill-fated job application. Armed with his personal details, the owners then wasted no time in tracking him down, ensuring that he faced all the consequences of his foolish actions. And so, our dear friend Umar Mirza found himself caught in the clutches of justice, receiving a well-deserved jail term. This robbery took place in Daisy Hill, where 3 daring men decided to break into a house, thinking that they would get away with a fortune. Little did they know their every move was being recorded by a hidden camera that had been placed high up in the corner of the room. As the footage reveals, these bumbling burglars had no idea they were being watched as they rummaged through the owner's room. With multiple clear shots of their faces, the camera captured their every blunder. Clumsily donning gloves, they raided the room, seizing cameras, phones, and computers from the workspace. Their overconfidence was evident, as one of them excitedly exclaimed, "He's got a PlayStation," while another stuffed electronics into a bag. Meanwhile, the third thief would just casually sift through the equipment on the bed. Not content with their haul, the group proceeded to explore the upstairs, where they then helped themselves to designer handbags and jewelry. But little did they know their entire escapade was being documented on video. Then, to add insult to injury, the video was uploaded to Facebook, where it quickly gained popularity, racking up over 800,000 views. As viewers would watch the foolish thieves describe the contents of the room and ask for bags, one woman couldn't resist the opportunity to tag a potential suspect and warn them of the consequences. Undeterred, though, the homeowner took matters into his own hands, offering a $1,000 reward for information which would lead to the arrest and prosecution of the thieves. He sparked a wave of vigilante justice. People eagerly shared stills of the offenders, determined to give the homeowner the satisfaction that he was seeking. This teenage thief in Washington attempted a daring escape after swiping $18,000 worth of designer handbags from a Louis Vuitton store. But his ill-fated plan was ended abruptly when he collided head-on with a glass window, rendering himself unconscious. Mistaking the transparent barrier for freedom, his quick escape came to an embarrassing halt. This audacious thief targeted a black Range Rover parked on the prestigious Dawes Road in Fulham, oblivious to the security cameras capturing his every move. Little did he know that his misdeeds would be met with a healthy dose of instant karma. After loading up his loot on his bicycle, he attempted to escape, but fate had other plans for him. Before he could get very far, police officers were in front of him, and when he tried to turn around and escape, they used their van door as a barrier to stop him. 2 teenage carjackers in Maryland learned that stealing a car with a manual transmission isn't as easy as it looks. After demanding the car keys from a man at a gas station in Germantown, they soon realized their mistake when they couldn't figure out how to drive the stick shift. Their escape plan came to a screeching halt as the car refused to move. In desperation, they abandoned the vehicle and attempted to flee on foot, but the police swiftly apprehended them a few blocks away.
Some people wake up daily and search the internet for tips on how to ruin their day. Better still, they ask Google for tips on how to be stupid but act cool. This man had succeeded in various mischievous acts in the past, but on this fateful day, he ran out of luck. He probably saw many heist movies and thought he could pull something off in a few minutes before someone raised the alarm. First, he gets into the vape store, which was empty. He meets only the receptionist and is relieved that everything is fine. It didn't take too long for him to fumble and mistakenly drop the gun on the receptionist's feet and then try to get it. His pants are too tight at the crotch, and he cannot climb the counter to get the gun. Even if he wanted to, he'd be climbing on a glass that may likely shatter and leave his fingerprints on it for free. There was no way he would pull through with that. Therefore, he ran away from the heist with his pants down while the police were on their way. The chances of getting caught outside are higher given how much time he spent inside figuring out an escape route. Even if he isn't caught immediately, the guns and fingerprints are all evidence the police need to apprehend him. He had a lot of time to become a more responsible adult, but he rejected it. Remember the trapdoor story? Yes, this is a similar one. Victims of robbery are constantly searching for creative ways to preserve their valuables while exposing the thieves. This store owner had been robbed several times more than she could remember. Because of the items she sells can easily fit into the palms and tiniest pockets, catching these thieves is tasking. They would even break into the store at night to carry as much as possible from the shelves. After consulting security experts, this lady found the perfect trick to nip this menace in the bud. After the day's job, the employers hid all the phones in a safe place away from the shelf. They would return it to the showcase the next morning. While this was stressful, it was the best way to preserve the valuables. She installed a CCTV and an electric fence where the phones were kept. One night, she got a notification from the CCTV and logged in to see the drama unfold before her eyes. She watched as the burglar crawled into the room and took many phones before attempting to leave. Too late, he was trapped and could not get out. Not even climbing the fence could help him. He struggled with the fence until the police helped him out of it and took him home. Oh, not home. He accompanied them to the police station for chit-chat.
Considering the fact that there are so many things that could easily implicate them, the most experienced criminals spend a lot of time trying to put their operations together with a lot of organization. But there are also some criminals who just seem like they're kind of winging it and aren't even sure of what the heck they're doing. Take a look at these guys. Apparently their goal was to break into a building and steal a television set. But things just kept going from bad to worse. The clip begins with one of them struggling with their getaway car before finally breaking the glass partition to get into the building. Now, does he have a plan to move the television? Well, of course not. He just clumsily rolls it around while it hangs on the wall. His accomplice decides to step into the situation, and just when you think the guy would at least bring a sense of order and organization to the whole mess, well, guess what he chooses to do? A third burglar then comes to join them, but he only focuses on the getaway and being ready while the other two keep trying to break the TV off the wall. And from then on, it really just became a terrible comedy of errors. At this point, I really don't have much else to say. I mean, it's a miracle that the guys were even able to get themselves out of the place without running into a light pole or something. Remember when I said that there really is no point in stealing from a store? Well, I wasn't joking. With the number of cameras that they usually have installed, you'd probably have more eyes on you than a Hollywood star. But still, some people manage to dare things and test their fate. And to make things even worse, they decide to steal the most outrageous things in the stupidest of ways. I mean, just take a look at this lady. She had gone to a store in her neighborhood and decided that she wanted to steal some tools. Well, what tool, you may ask? How about a bloody chainsaw? Now, let me get this straight. She literally got a chainsaw and tried to put it up her pants. Are you really joking at this point? Eventually, she decided that her chainsaw caper was not going to work, so she decided to place her bag down and really try to fit that thing in. With the chainsaw finally between her cheeks, she decided it was time to head out of the store. Now honestly, I don't even think I have any words for the woman right now. She really just thought that she'd walk out of the store like that, as though there were nothing to see there. It was just her and her unusually large behind heading out after doing nothing weird. People really are one of a kind now, aren't they? An Ohio man was left with a black eye following an unexpected twist of destiny during a robbery gone wrong. Andre Young attempted to rob a speedway in Forest Park, Ohio, only to be met with a swift and dramatic intervention captured on security camera. Young allegedly presented the cashier with a scary ultimatum. Armed with a box cutter, he said, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way," and then attempted a daring leap over the counter. However, the answer was prompt and decisive. The cashier knocked Young out with a single hard punch to the face, leaving the would-be thief sprawled out on the floor. This would be a watershed moment in the robbery, with the cashier opting for the easier way, at least from his own point of view. The cashier wasted no time in alerting the police and informing them what had happened, saying that he had no choice except to knock him out. His swift action not only foiled the robbery attempt, but also safeguarded the community and everyone around him. Now, we've all faced the ubiquitous pull-to-open conundrum at some point in our lives, but the stakes were considerably higher in this case. The man in question was not attempting to rob the bank, but his terror and desperation gave the impression that he was. It's the usual mix-up story, with a simple blunder leading to an inadvertent capture. As his painstakingly planned theft collapsed and alarms blared, the would-be robber made a frantic sprint for the escape. In his panic, he never considered the door might need to be pushed rather than pulled. He yanked and tugged helplessly, believing that he was imprisoned within the bank that he had wanted to flee, and caught between his own devious ambition and a door that wouldn't budge, he eventually conceded to defeat, submitting himself to the inevitable arrival of the police. He had no idea that a fateful turn of events was just around the bend. As minutes passed, an unrelated, innocent senior woman enters the bank. The would-be thief quickly realized the tremendous folly and had misread the door, which actually was a push instead of a pull. With fresh clarity, he seizes the opportunity and flees into the obscurity of the streets.
These two lovebirds thought they had it all figured out. Still, little did they know, their criminal caper was about to become a hilarious fail. The couple walked into a local convenience store, looking for a snack. They grabbed a 4.39 packet of popcorn and tried to pay for it with a stolen credit card. The store owners immediately called the police on the suspicious duo. When the cops arrived, the coward of the group used his girlfriend as a human shield, trying to make a run for it. But his girlfriend had other ideas. She ran into the back room, which seemed like a dead end. Suddenly, inspiration struck, and she thought maybe the way out was actually up. That's when the girlfriend made her daring escape into the air vents. She thought she was going to get away scot-free, but little did she know she was in for a big surprise. As she crawled through the vents, she must have been thinking she was the queen of the criminal underworld. But then, all of a sudden, she fell right through the ceiling and into the store. Talk about a rough landing. The store owners must have been shocked to see her fall from the sky, but the police were even more shocked when they saw how she got there. It's like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. In the end, these dumb criminal couples were arrested because of a 4.39 packet of popcorn. Get ready to laugh, shake your head in disbelief, and be entirely stunned by the sheer lack of intelligence displayed by this 19-year-old criminal from Nebraska. After she pulled off a daring bank heist and made off with $6,000, she thought it would be a great idea to post a video about it on YouTube. Or what do you do after a successful heist? You brag about it on YouTube, of course. But instead of just talking about it like an average criminal, she went above and beyond and showed off her creative side. This young lady needed more than just a simple video. Oh no, she wanted to be an artist too. Taking inspiration from the legendary Bob Dylan, she wrote out all the details of her crime on handwritten signs. She held them up in front of the camera. In the video, she can be seen fanning herself with the money, flaunting her cash, pretending to smoke a cigar, and even showing off the keys to the stolen vehicle. And to add insult to injury, she proclaimed that it was the best day of her life. Well, the Nebraskan Police Department could have been more impressed. It's like she wanted to be caught. And sure enough, they quickly caught up with her and arrested her. Hannah will now spend between 10 and 20 years behind bars, all thanks to her brief moment of YouTube fame. So remember, if you're going to commit a crime, you shouldn't broadcast it on the internet, so you don't end up like Hannah.
An armed thief met his demise when a quick-thinking shopkeeper turned the tables on him. Malcolm Trimble had found himself in the situation that resulted in imprisonment for 3 years and 4 months. He entered a business armed with a concealed kitchen knife under his sleeve and menacingly targeted the staff. However, it was the shopkeeper who displayed extraordinary bravery and fast thinking. They exited the premises in a bold maneuver and, in an act of resistance, held the door closed, effectively capturing Trimble inside as he battled to escape. The shopkeeper engaged the security system, commanding the roller shutters to descend, shutting the entire entry down and trapping Trimble within. Trimble attempted to escape by sliding beneath the shutters. However, fortune would not be on his side. He had missed his time, and just as he was about to escape, he was pinned between the metal shutters, his head inside the shop and his body out on the street. He was completely immobile, his head pressed against the glass door, and the weight of the shutter firmly pinning him to the ground. As the stranded robber reflected on his funny situation, he surrendered defeat, opening a can of beer to satiate his thirst while waiting for the authorities to arrive. Authorities would arrive only 3 minutes later and take him into custody. A liquor shop clerk in Missouri had a stunning surprise in store for an aspiring armed robber who thought he could outdraw his victim. On a routine Sunday night, John Lewis Alexander, a war veteran and former prison guard, was working the register when the scenario took a turn. While Alexander was performing his duties, a man enters the store smoking a cigarette despite the business policy. Undaunted, Alexander urged the customer to put it out before proceeding. But what happened next, however, would be nothing short of astounding. The obstinate customer, a would-be robber, pulled out a gun and pointed it at Alexander. Surprisingly and against all odds, the ex-military veteran answered by drawing his own gun and pointing it squarely at the criminal's face. The confrontation lasted only 11 seconds, beginning when the armed man entered the store. Alexander's quick and fearless reaction demonstrated his amazing calm in a stressful circumstance where instinct and experience collide. The would-be robber quickly recognized he had met his match in this high-stakes fight. When confronted with a clerk who had proved to be quicker on the draw and steadfast in the face of danger, the criminal acknowledged defeat and fled the business. Still on the subject of people trying to steal jewelry, you can imagine how much stores have to invest in security and privacy features to protect themselves and their inventory. However, besides the security cameras and the hired personnel, I actually think that one of the best things a jewelry store can invest in would be doors that can be closed remotely. Don't think those doors are effective? Well, check out this scenario. Apparently, this guy was looking to pull a fast one on a jewelry store owner, but things backfired in the funniest way possible. The moment that he tried to open the door, he couldn't, and the guy immediately knew the jig was up, and there would be no way for him to leave. The only course of action for him was to return the chain and beg the storekeeper for forgiveness. Well, the keeper apparently was not in a forgiving mood, and he immediately called the cops on this would-be thief. To think that the entire thing could easily have gone sideways if the store didn't have that automatic closing mechanism on the door. Let this be a lesson. If you own a store, you sure as heck need one of these doors to prevent these weirdos. If you're a thief and you're trying to rob a store at odd hours, the general thought would be that their door would be locked or something. But what if it wasn't? What if it was just your mind playing tricks on you? Well, I don't know the answer to that, but something tells me that this guy might have made a bit of a miscalculation. As you can see in the clip, he had taken a trash can and was looking to break the door, but the problem was that the door was actually open the entire time, and he found out just a bit too late. The crazy thing about the entire clip was that the security cameras managed to get a pretty clear picture of his face, so apart from the fact that the guy would probably now be booked for breaking and entering, he would also be liable for repairing the door. A door which, once again, he didn't even need to break in the first place. Obviously, intelligence is not a requirement for committing a crime, because this one quickly turned into a comedy of errors. The genius plan here? Throwing cobblestones at a parked car, hoping to score some loot. But little did they know their every move was being watched by vigilant police who were monitoring things. Unfortunately for them, the car turned out to be empty, leaving them empty-handed and exposed. These stone-throwing bandits were swiftly apprehended, and their dreams of ill-gotten gains were shattered. This would-be thief had his plans foiled by an unexpected opponent, an automatic door lock. The young culprit thought that he could waltz out of the shop with stolen mobile phones, but little did he know that the door was up for the challenge. The door remained resolutely locked as the thief struggled to escape, much to his frustration. The shop owner had captured the debacle on video and shared it on social media, which would promptly went viral. The sight of the baffled thief desperately trying to outsmart a door had everyone in stitches. When faced with carjackers, one brave trucker refused to be a victim. And in this video, we witness an epic moment unfold. The trucker sprang into action as the carjackers clumsily emerged from their stolen SUV. With nerves of steel, the hero skillfully maneuvers his truck, revving the engine and confronting the would-be thieves. In a split-second decision, he accelerated, sending the startled carjackers scattering like frightened rabbits and pushing their SUV out of his way even as he escaped. Surveillance camera footage from a cell phone in Houston, Texas, dated April 17th of 2017, shows a remarkable depiction of the 5 phases of mourning. John Bell approached the restaurant calmly, requesting cash from an employee with intimidation in his voice. However, the answer would be unexpected. The employee, along with 2 customers, quickly ran away, locking Bell inside of the store. He then went on a series of desperate moves as the awareness of his confinement had dawned on him, each level of misery mimicking the phases of sorrow. Bell fired rounds at the lock and made a series of failed attempts to kick the door in, and his desperate fight evolved into a stage of bargaining and supplication, one in which he had begged any heavenly or supernatural forces to intervene. The sobs of the confined criminal filled the store, conveying his sense of isolation and despair. Eventually, the long arm of the law would step in, and his harrowing ordeal came to an end when police arrived. They captured him quickly, putting an end to his dramatic trip through the phases of grief. When it comes to the most terrifying disguises of history, an Optimus Prime mask is unlikely to be your first thought. That is until you consider Ryan Flores' tragic experience as a would-be robber at a Starbucks in Fresno, California. He demanded that the cashier hand over all of her money while brandishing a knife and a revolver, and in a frantic plea, he told her that he had no intentions of harming her and that he was acting for the benefit of his children. The blade was all too real, but thankfully so was the pistol. His evil plans took an unexpected turn when he approached the counter when a brave client intervened. This hero, armed with a metal chair, foiled his plans by launching a surprise attack from behind. The ensuing battle would result in many stab wounds for both individuals. Flores attempted to flee despite his injuries, but law enforcement quickly tracked him down and caught up with him. While this is not the normal course of action, the outcome was positive in this particular circumstance, and fortunately no one lost their lives that day. The unusual usage of an Optimus Prime mask, which is frequently linked with valor, became an emblem of both criminal intent and surprising heroics that day in Fresno, California. Dennis Hawkins unwittingly earned a place in the history of idiotic criminals. His crime attempt offers a comical lesson in the art of disguises, or the lack thereof. In a misguided attempt to conceal his identity during a bank robbery, Hawkins donned an outfit that could only be described as a carnival sideshow. The ensemble featured clown pants, a blonde wig, and a pair of fake breasts, rendering his disguise anything but believable. However, Hawkins' questionable fashion choices were not the only factors that led to his swift capturing. Despite the flamboyant attire, he neglected to hide his facial features, which still sported a conspicuous goatee and mustache. Unsurprisingly, his peculiar getup drew immediate attention, eventually leading to his apprehension by law enforcement. For his heist preparation, Hawkins shoplifted a BB gun from a local Kmart and then proceeded to rob a bank at gunpoint. He managed to escape with an undisclosed sum of money, but was soon pursued by the authorities. Police would receive a tip from a nearby gas station, reporting a man fitting his description attempting to steal a car, which led to his swift arrest. Ultimately, Hawkins' antics would lead him to a holding cell with a bail that was set at a rather hefty $230,000, cementing his legacy as a contender for the title of dumbest criminal. A surveillance video showcasing 2 inept thieves attempting to make off with 2 putters from a pro shop took the internet by storm. This bumbling pair strolled into the Ferndown Forest Golf Club in England, and in an astonishing display of audacity, they decided to stuff the 2 putters down their pants, right in front of the pro shop security camera. These particular putters were no ordinary ones. They were Scotty Camerons, each valued at a hefty 425 British pounds. As fate would have it, the shop staff were conveniently positioned near the door, engaging with another customer. The two culprits brazenly stroll out, hop into their white Ford van, and then speed away. However, the pro shop had already captured all of their information and identified them. The would-be pro golfers did not stay anonymous for very long, as they shortly after leaving the golf course, someone recorded their license plate number as they made a getaway. Local authorities then promptly tracked them down. Thanks to the video, they were identified, and the stolen putters were returned to the club.
This guy thought he had a foolproof plan to save some cash on his cell phone bill. But little did he know that his scheme was about to go bust and come crashing down faster than a phone on a retractable cord. He strolled into a phone store with a twinkle in his eye and a master plan in mind. He was going to grab the latest and greatest phone and make a break for it. But before he could even make it out the door, his plan hit a major snag. He was convinced that he had it all figured out. But oh no, he was completely wrong. You see those retractable cords that keep the phone securely attached to the display tables? They caught him red-handed. As soon as he made a move for the door, the retractable cord pulled tight and sent his prized possession flying out of his hand. The phone hit the floor with a resounding crash, and our hapless criminal was left standing there, red-faced and embarrassed. The store assistant looked on in disbelief as our bumbling thief tried to act cool. But let's be real, there was no hiding the embarrassment on his face. He meekly made his exit, no doubt thinking about his Nokia 3210 and good old Snake. This is what happens when you try to cheat the system. The camera never lies, and in this case, it caught a criminal in the act of being the dumbest criminal. Two guys in Iowa came up with the craziest idea ever when they decided to rob a house, but you also wouldn't believe what they ultimately came up with to disguise themselves before robbing a house. Instead of the classic stockings, balaclavas, or a newly grown beard, they decided to draw all over their faces with permanent markers. Just come on. One of the guys got creative and drew a cool-looking beard and mustache, while the other went for the superhero look with a mask made of squiggles and lines. But let's be real. They just looked like two guys who got way too drunk and thought it would be funny to draw on each other's faces. Apparently, the guys chose their victim because one of them believed that his girlfriend may have been having an affair with the homeowner. Little did they know the police were already on their way after someone reported two men with painted faces about to rob a house. When the police stopped the car at gunpoint, they couldn't help but laugh at the sight of the guys with their bizarre and ridiculous drawings on their faces. The officers later joked about it being the worst disguise ever. In the end, the pair was charged with second-degree burglary and will always be remembered as the guys who tried to rob a house with a permanent marker disguise. But come to think of it, they could probably have succeeded had they stuck with the usual disguises and left the markers for the kids. Which of these dumb criminals' discoveries did you find the most intriguing? Let us know your answers in the comments below.
You know, there are some theft instances that really just take the cake for me. For instance, have you seen what happens when a man just knows that the jig is up for him? In this next clip, we see a moment when a thief literally enters a store, only to have his entire operation backfire on him just because he was clumsy. Things begin with the guy literally entering the store and brandishing his gun to make everyone scared. The problem for the guy, however, was that he appeared to be so focused on the money that he didn't realize he was standing in a literal trap. And as soon as he was out of the way, the store attendant got everyone to leave immediately. Seeing that the door had been locked, the guy then goes into panic mode. And he just shot at the door and tried to kick it, but even that wouldn't do anything, so he decided to throw his body at the door instead. Now he really begins to put on the theatrics.
Please, help, please.
Praying to God to help get you out of a robbery after you've been caught. I'm not so sure that anyone ever broke it to you, but that's not quite how the whole thing works. I mean, if it were that easy, every criminal would just become a Christian when their operation goes south. The guy eventually surrendered, and all he could do was stand there and wait for his fate. Talk about being in jail before you actually go to jail. That must have been a rough outing for him. Now, if you thought a would-be robber who clumsily dropped his gun was worse, trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. For this final video, we'll be looking at the case of absolute and utmost foolishness. Here, we have a robber who had already gotten into a store and was already intimidating the attendant into giving him all the money in the register. The woman agreed, but with a twist. Instead of just giving it all to him, she placed it on the counter instead. The moment the robber saw the money in front of him, he lost all sense of composure and caution and literally placed his gun on the counter while trying to stuff all of the bills in the bag. And the gun was right there, so the attendant picked it up. It was at this moment that the guy knew he'd messed up, immediately running for the hills, although according to reports his freedom didn't last long. He would be arrested the next day and immediately placed in jail. As these shoplifters made a desperate dash to their car with stolen clothing, one of the women encountered an unexpected obstacle, a locked car door. The security footage captured her futile attempts to open the door while her partner in crime sped off, leaving her stranded. To add insult to injury, their hasty escape ended in a collision with a police vehicle, and the suspect was apprehended after a short chase. At a Kentucky gas station, two robbers with knives thought they had an easy target in Aaron Jacobs, the lone night shift cashier. But little did they know, he was a former Marine combat trainer and a karate black belt. As one robber approached him from behind, Jacobs sprang into action, swiftly disarming and subduing the attacker. He sent the robber crashing into a display shelf with a single move. Seeing their comrade's defeat, the other one fled the scene. It was like a Hollywood blockbuster when a convenience store turned into a battleground as two ninja-clad teenagers attempted to rob it with a machete. But they were in for quite the surprise when the cashier unleashed his scimitar-style sword to defend himself. Caught on surveillance camera, the brave cashier skillfully disarmed one of the robbers with his Sinbad-style sword, leaving them stunned. This guy decided it was a good day to commit an armed robbery, but he didn't know that the day would end on a very sad note for him. He jumps to the back of a taxi and demands money from the poor driver at gunpoint, and even after the taxi driver gives him all of his proceeds, he still wants the man's wallet and phone. In this process, the police arrived and arrested him right in the act. Police would take 40-year-old Matthew Crowder into custody, unraveling his theft at a local consignment store. The twist in this tale lies in his astounding lack of discretion. Just before committing his alleged theft, he had handed his business card, complete with his personal details, to the store clerk. Officers could not help but comment on his audacity, calling him a goofball. Apparently, he had offered his card in a bid to solicit a date from the female store clerk. Crowder left his name with his business card after he shoplifted, trying to hit on the girl that he had shoplifted from. But there is more. Just hours after his alleged theft, Crowder took to Facebook to boast about the items that he had stolen. He explicitly stated that he had stolen a necklace for a girl named Emily, yet ironically, this action of love was foiled due to him pursuing another woman. The post was one of many that Crowder had bragged about in his raids. He had already had outstanding warrants for shoplifting and theft in 3 other jurisdictions. When you're trying to rob an establishment, it may help to keep the weapon in your hands. This person let her greed get the best of her, and she slipped up as a consequence. Surveillance footage would capture a dramatic confrontation between a hotel employee and a would-be robber. The female suspect entered Victory Suites, demanding money from the counter's clerk. The clerk complied, but she slammed the money on the counter instead of placing it gently. The robber had to slowly stack it and put it in her bag. The slow pace got to her, though, and she momentarily released her handgun to collect the money with both of her hands. In a swift and bold move, the employee would seize the weapon and turn it on the would-be thief, and a fight ensued between the two. During the struggle, the handgun falls to the floor, but the clerk manages to kick it out of the assailant's reach, and although the suspect managed to escape, the registered firearm would allow the police to trace her identity. She faced accusations of involvement in at least one other robbery. The brave hotel clerk, despite minor injuries, thwarted the robbery attempt, demonstrating quick thinking and courage during a potentially life-threatening situation. It's a lucky break that not all crooks exhibit the kind of stupidity demonstrated in this case. A closed-circuit camera in a suburban Denver convenience store captures an embarrassing moment as a would-be thief attempted to carry out a stick-up operation. Video footage depicts the entire action in almost comedic detail. The suspect approaches the counter, determined to make illegal intentions, and draws what looks to be a handgun with the bravado that would soon prove to be his undoing. But a tragic twist of fate is going to occur because the robber loses the grasp on his weapon as he brandishes it, resulting in the BB gun falling from his fingers and vaulting over the counter. The cashier swiftly regains calm after being startled by the sight and gently collects the firearm, and the inept criminal, who had briefly considered hopping over the counter, instantly realizes the futility of the situation and decides to flee. The suspect's ineptitude extended to his wardrobe. He donned gloves allegedly to prevent leaving fingerprints, but the police, on the other hand, remained optimistic. They suspected that despite the lack of fingerprints in the store, there may be enough evidence at the scene to allow authorities to identify the bumbling thief. A valuable lesson on the significance of assessing a situation before resorting to gun-wielding robbery was learned when one seemingly brave assailant paid the price for his reckless actions. He had not taken the time to assess the crowd as he approached the register, armed and ready. The man, wearing a striking Mexican cowboy hat, stood firmly at the counter. In a shocking turn of events, the man with the hat grasped the perfect opportunity. He took advantage of the assailant's brief attention by lunging forward with incredible agility to tackle him. The robber would be forced to disarm, and the gun clattered on the floor as a result of their battle. Another employee picked up the discarded weapon, preventing additional harm, and the robber, evidently scared, sought a hasty getaway. He dashed for the exit, desperate to get out of the situation that he'd found himself in. However, his flight was quickly halted by one of the store's unflappable employees who had held firm. This riveting story serves as a sharp reminder that hasty decisions may have unanticipated effects. This 40-year-old man found himself in a bit of a pickle. He was sitting in a cell at a police station in Brazil after getting caught for stealing. Now, he had this brilliant idea to escape, and you won't believe how he tried to pull it off. You see, there was a small hole in the cell door's food passage, and it was only 30 centimeters wide, which is not exactly spacious. However, our daring thief thought that he could squeeze through it and make a run for it. What an escape plan, right? As luck would have it, though, things did not go according to plan. As soon as he began to shimmy through that tiny hole, disaster would strike, and he got stuck. Can you imagine the panic? There he was, shouting for help, realizing that he had miscalculated his body dimensions or something. The police officers couldn't free him, so they had to call firefighters in for backup. That's right, firefighters actually had to come to the rescue of a thief that was stuck in a door. I bet they never expected that when they signed up for the job. After about 30 agonizing minutes, firefighters managed to save the day. They had to use a hydraulic tool to pry him out, and I can only imagine the relief on his face when he was finally freed from that door's clutches. Well, let's just say this thief's grand escape plan did not quite work out as he had hoped for. It looks like he'll have to stick to a life behind bars for a little while longer, and that's a lesson that's learned the hard way. There's this funny Australian teenager who walks into a store with a clever idea. He puts a whole crate of alcohol on the counter, thinking that he's pulling off a huge crime right in front of the shopkeeper. It's just typical mischief from a teenager. He stands near the automatic doors, ready to grab the drinks and run away before anyone can react. But here's where the surprise comes in. The shopkeeper, like a smart detective, notices the teenager's suspicious behavior, and instead of panicking or calling for help, he calmly uses a remote control to lock the doors. The teenage thief is now stuck inside of the store that he thought that he could outsmart. What a funny twist. The teenager's face shows his surprise when he realizes that he's been tricked, and instead of getting away with Jack Daniels and Coke, he's trapped like a kangaroo in a pouch, panicking as he searches his pockets for money to pay for the drinks he never planned to purchase in the first place. And to make things even worse, he now has to face the shopkeeper, the person that he had tried to rob. It's a conversation that's full of awkwardness. And so, this troublemaking Australian teenager thought that he had the perfect crime planned out But fate and a clever shopkeeper had different ideas. In the end, all he got was nothing, and a hard lesson about underestimating shopkeepers. So, it's one thing to be a criminal who's looking for a huge score, but it's another to not even be aware of the fact that you're being watched. Apparently, this lady had managed to do both at the same time. This next clip shows what appears to be a regular interaction between a shopkeeper and a customer, but it's about to take an interesting turn. Here, it appears that the woman is just getting ready to make a payment for an item and be on her way. But just as she was about to leave the store, the keeper immediately activates the door locking mechanism on his end, essentially trapping the two of them inside. Now, is this kidnapping? Why on earth would the shopkeeper do this? Apparently, he had been watching her the entire time and noticed that she had put a bottle of white wine in her bag that she was hoping to make away with. Can you even imagine what it must have been like to be in this situation? Getting caught after the theft is one thing, but to get caught by the shopkeeper in this manner, well, that's incredibly embarrassing. Considering the fact that there are so many things that could easily implicate them, the most experienced criminals spend a lot of time trying to put their operations together with a lot of organization. But there are also some criminals who just seem like they're kind of winging it and aren't even sure of what the heck they're doing. Take a look at these guys. Apparently their goal was to break into a building and steal a television set. But things just kept going from bad to worse. The clip begins with one of them struggling with their getaway car before finally breaking the glass partition to get into the building. Now, does he have a plan to move the television? Well, of course not. He just clumsily rolls it around while it hangs on the wall. His accomplice decides to step into the situation, and just when you think the guy would at least bring a sense of order and organization to the whole mess, well, guess what he chooses to do? A third burglar then comes to join them, but he only focuses on the getaway and being ready while the other two keep trying to break the TV off the wall. And from then on, it really just became a terrible comedy of errors. At this point, I really don't have much else to say. I mean, it's a miracle that the guys were even able to get themselves out of the place without running into a light pole or something. A would-be thief's attempt to steal from a bottle shop took a hilarious turn, as captured on security camera footage. This thief, dressed in a flannel shirt, entered the shop and nonchalantly took a 12-pack of drinks off the shelf, heading to the counter. He then approaches the sliding doors leading to the street in an attempt to flee quickly. However, in irony, the door stayed firmly sealed. The store attendant used a magnet to keep them in place, producing a comical tableau. The would-be burglar tried to pry open the sliding doors with increasing desperation as the employee stood calmly behind the counter watching the farce unfold. The scene was amusing because the dramatic contrast between his frantic efforts and the store attendant's calm demeanor. Recognizing the hopelessness of escape, the burglar then concedes defeat, returning to the counter and placing the 12-pack of drinks at the worker. He recognized his futile efforts before exiting the premise in a graceful manner. The bottle shop immediately reported the incident to local authorities and requested anyone who could identify the unfortunate thief to come forward. Many people on social media expressed their delight at the footage, with many of them being happy that the situation had not escalated into violence. A bakery employee outwitted an armed criminal, leaving him crying for mercy as he was trapped inside the exact shop that he intended to loot. The guy confronted a female employee of the bakery and wasted no time proclaiming his intentions. His threat of violence weighed heavily in the air as he lifted his shirt and moved for the cash register. Surprisingly, the employee remained calm, her manner dramatically contrasting the deadly situation taking place in front of her. She replied to the suspect's requests with composure, stepping aside to enable him access to the register, having previously devised an effective escape route. The would-be thief became increasingly frustrated as cameras failed to discourage him. In desperation, he demanded the woman's smartphone, only to fumble around near the register in vain, unable to find it. The quick-thinking employee took advantage of this opportunity, and while the suspect was focused on finding the phone, she quietly strolled outside and dropped the gate before securely locking it. The captive offender would be stunned inside the now sealed-up shop, striving in vain to lift the gate. He begged passionately for rescue, understanding that his scheme had fallen apart, and video shows the suspect's failed attempts to flee, which included placing a wooden display shelf behind the entrance to keep possible rescuers away. In his desperate last-ditch effort, he grabbed a fire extinguisher and busted open a window. His freedom, however, would be fleeting because watchful police officers were simply waiting outside.
Even if it means staying at home all day, avoid getting into trouble at all costs. And if it's necessary to get into trouble, do it with a friend you can easily get away with. I understand people visiting homes to steal from them or on the street and running into an abandoned house to seek shelter. But robbing in a police station? The culprit must be high on some cheap drugs. The man in this clip lost control of himself and thought it was best to end the day by paying a friendly visit to the police station. Getting there, he found a beautiful bicycle which he thought would fetch him some good money if he sold it. Therefore, he went closer to have a look. After examining it, it looked so beautiful to leave behind, so he detached it and headed for the door. He had barely turned when the cops closed in on him. They were already watching him and monitoring his next move to be sure of his intentions. He immediately surrendered and was disarmed. The officer removed his face mask to reveal his identity while warning that robbing a police station was the worst thing to do with your free time. Hopefully, he gets some warning and is let go. Otherwise, he'll spend some days with his fellow burglars. Robbers are often careful not to leave traces of their evil deeds before leaving the place. Except a spirit possesses you. You don't want anyone tracing you to your previous crimes. Ruben Zarate was not well informed about his new trade before starting. He had just clocked 18 and thought stealing was a profitable career. In 2008, he entered a shop in Chicago to rob it. Armed with a gun, he demanded money from the clerk. She wished she had some cash to give him so he could leave peacefully, but she didn't. She told him all the money was in the safe and the only manager had access to it. The frustrated teenager wondered how he would leave the store with nothing. In fact, he changed his mind and gave her his phone number. He asked that she call him when the manager returned from the trip. Of course, she'll do him a favor, but first she has to call the Chicago police. They arrived disguised in ordinary outfits and stood at strategic points. Hours later, they instructed her to call the robber. Zarate, the dumbest criminal in Chicago, showed up. Although he was armed, there was no way he would win in a shootout with at least 5 police officers. He was shot in the leg and arrested. The police charged him with an attempted robbery and aggravated assault of a police officer. Employees were worried that Ruben's friends might come after them in retaliation. Some had to apply to work somewhere else for fear of their lives.
In Florida, a shoplifter named Darren Durant made an unusual attempt to steal a crossbow from a True Value store. Security cameras would capture his comical heist. Durant would be spotted trying to squeeze the large Raven Rio bow into the front of his sweatpants, which clearly struggled to contain it. As he made his getaway, the crossbow's handle stuck out from his waistband, making his theft painfully obvious. Store employees had noticed the 2 bows were missing and decided to review surveillance footage. They discovered that Durant had taken a pair of cutting tools, removed the zip ties from the crossbow, and then attempted his awkward concealment action. The county sheriff could not resist sharing the amusing incident on social media, dubbing Durant one of the world's dumbest criminals. And despite his peculiar disguise and limp, he was located by a deputy in a nearby Walgreens parking lot only a few days later, trying to escape on foot, but he didn't get very far. Durant, who had already had 2 felony theft convictions, was arrested on an unrelated burglary charge. What do you think about all these silly burglaries and robberies? Let me know in the comments down below. Be sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. In the footage shared by owner Emma Irvine, we see a man kicking through a bakery's glass front door and entering the premises. Surprisingly, instead of causing further chaos, the intruder takes an unusual turn, opting for a chair and a brief respite, resting for approximately 10 to 15 minutes before deciding to make his way to the bathroom. Upon reappearing on camera, he emerges not as a defiant criminal, but as a janitor, armed with a mop and a bucket. With admirable politeness, he begins the arduous task of cleaning up the shattered glass that he had inadvertently created during his break-in. And while the man was respectful of the establishment, his cleanup skills left some room for improvement. After capturing some selfies on the bakery's cell phone and proudly showcasing his oversized orange sunglasses, the courteous thief finally departs over an hour later. However, he did not leave empty-handed. He had helped himself to 6 chocolate champagne cupcakes before his exit. The story takes another unexpected turn when the thief calls the bakery days later, offering an apology for his actions and volunteering to cover the $850 or so in damages to the door, along with gifting his prized orange sunglasses. The owner had decided not to press charges and expressed empathy for the young man.
These two masterminds were caught red-handed or red-faced in a London alleyway. They thought they had everything they needed for the perfect heist: gloves, bandanas, and a gun. But they needed to remember one crucial detail: to check for cameras. They didn't know that they were being watched, and we mean watched closely. The whole scene was caught on CCTV, and let's just say it's not their finest hour. These two, who probably thought they were dressed to impress for their big heist, were completely unaware of the camera right beside them, capturing every silly move they made. And trust us, their actions were ridiculous. But that's not all. They managed to walk out of the alley with their weapon, ready to rob their unsuspecting victim whom they'd been targeting for his flashy and expensive car. But as soon as their intended target took off running, these two robbers also ran for the hills. If you're going to commit a crime, at least ensure there are no cameras around to catch you. And if you do get caught, try to make a run for it. We may never know what they were expecting, but one thing's for sure: they were not ready for the police to come after them. These guys might have had gloves, bandanas, and a gun, but they needed a foolproof plan. But hey, 3 out of 4 ain't bad, right? This will be a wild ride, so you'd better buckle up for a journey filled with twists, turns, and possibly the most bumbling criminals caught on camera. These guys thought they had the perfect heist all planned out, but little did they know that their every move was being captured. They planned to break into a pizza store and make away with every cash they could lay their hands on. They were determined to avoid the motion detector sensors, so they hit the floor and started rolling their way to the back room. Little did they know the store owner was one step ahead, with cameras installed inside and outside the store. The thieves broke in with a handy crowbar through the front window, but their celebration was short-lived. As they pried open the safe with the exact crowbar, they were greatly disappointed. It was completely empty. But, never ones to leave empty-handed, they made off with a drill, speaker, flashlight, and even some toys from the game room. But the real punchline? The safe that these robbers worked so hard to crack open was nothing more than a decoy. The store owner had cleverly hidden the actual cash in plain sight. Well, if you're going to rob a place, do your research. And always remember that the answer to life's problems may not be a big hammer. But in this case, it sure made for an entertaining crime story caught on camera.
Now, I might not be a woman, but I have a lot of female friends, and whenever they talk about beauty products, it's always the same thing. These things are so expensive. But, as they say, you can't place a price on beauty, and even though cosmetics can be costly, my friends spend good money on them. For some women, though, the money just isn't there. Take a look at these 3 ladies who went into an Ulta beauty store in Suffolk back in November of 2020 and decided to loot the place. The women worked together as a team, helping each other to swipe one thing after another as they moved from aisle to aisle in the beauty shop. But unknown to them, their moves were all being recorded on the store's surveillance system. To make things even worse, the cameras managed to get their identities, and that would definitely prove useful to the police officers and investigators. According to reports, the women had stolen over $11,000 worth of items from the store, and with that kind of loot, I would not be surprised if they tried setting up their own operation. If you're working at a jewelry store, there's no doubt that you need to be incredibly smart, because jewelry is very valuable, and there are thousands of people who would always try their best to get their hands on some without having to pay for it. Look at this next video, where we see 2 people pretending to be a couple that enter a jewelry store and act like they're trying to buy a shiny diamond, when in reality, they're no more than petty thieves who are using face masks to hide their identity. Nevertheless, the attendant here was more than up to the task of catching their scheme, and she was able to prevent their little thieving operation. Can you even imagine the insane skill that the attendant showed? Almost as if she just knew that these people wanted to steal from the shop, and she handled it in the most professional way possible. You can see the feeling of dejection on them once they realized their jig had failed, and they wouldn't be getting any free jewelry that day. That's right, run along now, thieves. say that beauty is pain. I'm not really sure how true that saying is, but one thing I can guarantee you is that this woman probably never considered the pain of the embarrassment she was going to feel before taking on this daring operation. In this next clip, we see a woman who was caught trying to shoplift. And where did she put the clothing items that she tried to steal? Well, in her underwear.
Anita, that's like this. Vamos, Suarez. How many? So we get arrested.
9.
According to reports, this kangaroo lady had worn a pair of boxer shorts with built-in pouches that would allow her to place the clothing items inside of them directly. Sadly, though, she never accounted for the CCTV camera being in the shop that was on her all throughout her entire operation. The footage itself was not released by the police department, but footage of the woman being uncovered was allowed to be posted online. And just take a moment to check out the look on her face as different clothing was being pulled out of her crotch, one piece at a time. If you're ever considering a life of crime and petty theft, you should ask yourself, is it really worth all of this kind of embarrassment? Sometimes a thief's ploy becomes so brazen and stupid that even Mother Nature decides to chip in and get back at them. Take this guy, for instance. In January of 2021, a man living in Canada would be alarmed when security cameras at his house had picked up some other person who was trying to steal packages from the front of his home. As you would expect, the guy got up and ran to the door to confront the would-be thief, and that's when things took an incredibly hilarious turn from there.
Yeah, that's done. You're done.
Now, the fact that this guy's theft attempt failed in and of itself was already an embarrassment of the highest proportions, but to make things even worse, his car then got stuck in the snow as he tried to escape. And let me tell you, it was one tough snow patch.
You're done. Cops is coming. Cops is coming. Quick, call the police, now!
In what may just be the craziest sequence of all time, the guy's wheel got stuck in the snow the entire time, leaving enough time for the police to come and apprehend him. I mean, you know you already messed up when the person you're trying to steal from is literally giving you advice. Considering the fact that the prices of things have just been skyrocketing, you can imagine that a lot of people would struggle to get even the basic of needs, which includes snacks, but I really don't think that that gives anyone the right to steal. Apparently, the lady in this next clip didn't think so. Sporting a red hoodie, she went into a gas station and decided to get a few snacks. But little did the station owners know that she actually had a bit of a sinister motive. You know, when a person begins to walk around a store aimlessly like this, it's kind of a sign that they don't really know what they want, and they could even be looking to steal something. But what exactly does she want? Well, after having walked around the store, our criminal finally gets to the energy drink fridge, where she pulls out a can of Red Bull. Seeing that the register could have been looking, she decides to drop the can on some bread and pick up a pack of snacks before heading towards the counter, and then decided to make an excuse and head right back to the aisle where she had dropped the Red Bull, and guess what she did next? That's right, she picked the Red Bull up and went straight back to the counter. Of course, what she didn't know was that the security cameras had captured everything, and I can only imagine the look on her face when the police show up at her house the next day. Perhaps she'd even be drinking the Red Bull when she answered the door. Now, it should go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways. Crime does not pay. If anything, these guys definitely showed that in this video. But what do you think? Did any of these scenarios make you roll over laughing? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel so you get more videos like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.